Okay, do you feel that I am thinking free right now? Do you feel that my mind is outside of the box and I'm thinking so free that I'm freeling out of here? Do you feel how free my mind is right now? Because if you don't feel that I'm thinking free, believe me, there's gonna be heck to pay.
Hi everyone, Think the Free Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Panopticon, The Scars of Man on the Once Nameless Wilderness, Parts 1 and 2. This is the latest two-disc album from one of black metal's more unique projects of the decade, Austin L. Lunn's Panopticon. Lunn is a Kentucky singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and for over a decade now he's been taking the brutal sounds of black metal, the harsh vocals and the tremolo pick guitars, the blast beats, and blending that with sounds and instrumentation from the American folk tradition, acoustic guitars and fiddles and banjos. And while some of Panopticon's more formative releases might sound a little too cacophonous at points, like his 2012 record Kentucky, the dense layering of all this black metal instrumentation and American folk instrumentation created a really interesting and unique sound palette, one that would smooth out and become even grander in scope on Panopticon's following couple of records, 2014's Roads to the North and 2015's Autumn Eternal, both of which I highly recommend and are pretty much the reason I went into this new record over here with such high hopes, so much excitement, because for anyone who's been a fan of Panopticon up until this point, a double album worth of material can only be a good thing. Now, so far on this record, the fan reception has been huge, but personally, I am not enjoying this project nearly as much as I have pretty much everything Panopticon has done up until this point, for a handful of reasons that mostly apply across the entirety of this two-disc project. One, for whatever reason, Lunn draws a line, a separator between much of the metal and folk influences on this record. Sure, occasionally you might have a folkier track on here that has an electric guitar crescendo or a black metal cut that has a bit of an acoustic interlude, but for the most part on both of these discs, the black metal and the folk instrumentation don't coalesce in any significant way as they have on previous Panopticon efforts. Each of them are mostly relegated to their own separate disc, and to what artistic benefit, I don't know, because previously, bringing these elements together is what made Panopticon greater than the sum of its parts. When you pull them apart, what makes Panopticon unique kind of falls apart. Two, the production on this record I just found to be so-so a lot of the time, especially on the black metal cuts. The black metal recordings on this record just seem really flat to me. Just kind of feels like very Western, very American, overly atmospheric Godspeed You black metal, with an occasional touch of strings to add just a little bit of body, make it kind of dynamic. But for the most part, the sound of these songs just comes off really average. The instrumentation is nowhere near as tangible or as upfront or as in your face or as, I guess, muscular and defined as it's been on recent efforts. I mean, even the crescendos on this record are pretty flaccid, like the first big one that comes after a string break on the second track. It's almost like Panopticon just paints itself into a corner. Like, this is the thrill, this is the high that this song has been building up to all this time. And it doesn't get much better on the subsequent tracks, like the bad 80s style descending guitar leads on the track Blatumen. It sounds like something out of an awful NES video game soundtrack. Not only is it not interesting, but it's perplexing that this guitar lead, that this melody commands so much attention over the course of the entire track. The heavy metal guitar soloing that happens later on the song isn't much more impressive either. Now, as far as the folkier cuts, I'll say that here is where the production is slightly better, more crystal clear, more pristine, and has a nice reverby sheen on it. However, I will say that some of the songs on here are just so slow and just such a slog. The performances can feel kind of awkward and shaky, maybe just a little too loose to feel engaging throughout. And my third major problem with this record really kind of comes down to the vocals. Not only are they missing in action on some of the black metal passages here, but when they do show up, they're just so buried in the mix, they're hardly the exciting, commanding, bestial roar that I got from previous Panopticon records. It just feels like a step down. But then the vocals get even worse on the folkier cuts of this record. They're so mumbly and uncomfortable. And and I'm just not sure why. Is it for dramatic or emotional effect? Lund seems to mostly hang out in the lower register of his range, but he can't seem to just grab onto a note and hold it. When it comes to the cleaner singing on this record, I'll use this word again, shaky. Another thing that's kind of confusing about it is that this isn't even the first time Lund has sung clean vocals on his records. I mean, I remember him doing it on Kentucky, and it's sounding a lot more interesting and consistent there. The song Echoes in the Snow on the second disc is really the only cut on this record that features clean singing, where the vocal performance felt like it had a lick of confidence to it. It's one of the gruffer tracks on the record, has some very steady guitar strumming and fiddle layering, has a bit of a backwoods country vibe to it. I mean, I guess my last major problem with it is that I'm just not all that blown away by the songwriting. A lot of the chord progressions I find to be very tedious, very unimaginative. Though I will say, and maybe this is the best thing about the record, I do like a lot of the lyrical themes, a lot of the conceptual themes of the album. These nods to the natural world, the natural order. This album definitely takes more of an environmentalist angle, a preservationist angle. It almost sees a kind of spirituality in the natural world. This not only comes up in Lund's lyrics, but also in some of the vocal snippets he works into the record too. I mean, even the title of this 2-disc series is a nod to that idea, talking about the scars left on this wilderness that at one time before man had no name, had no nothing. It was just this wilderness. It was just this place. But outside of that, there's not a whole lot about this album that I find to be exciting or really all that great. For sure, a great deal of this album is listenable, but given Panopticon's previous material, it just really falls short of expectations for me. I feel like I've just listened to one of the more unique American black metal projects out there, period, get cut down into something that is just so completely generic. Not to mention drawn out to an almost unbearable length. Collectively on these 2 discs, I'm feeling a strong 4-2-5 on this thing. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like, please subscribe, and please don't cry. Just leave an angry comment in the comments if you're angry. Hit the bell as well, and over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Panopticon forever.